Hope you enjoyed the break as we return with the agenda for the second panel, Regional and International Partnership for Safe and Secure Open Cyberspace with the following speakers. The moderator of this panel discussion will be Mr. Johann Hesse, Head of Sales, Security Network AG. I invite you, Mr. Hesse, on the stage for the second panel discussion, and you will introduce the panelists of this discussion.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
So, warm welcome to everybody, distinguished guests, ladies, gentlemen. We have the most interesting panel today, trust and security, but we have also the most complicated panel. Why so? Because it's after lunch, and I do not count 300 to 500 people, so I would love to ask for some music and we dance all together to get you a little bit more with it. The idea is not only introducing the panelists and having a vivid discussion, but also inviting you at the end of the discussion, participating and asking questions if you like. If not, I will ask questions to you. That's more dangerous. Trust and security. It's a very interesting topic. And in the morning, we heard encouraging topics. Digitalization, security, everybody was talking about success in, for the countries and how the economic growth will come with the digitalization. Only some voices talked about the threats to come, and the threats are already here. So that is why I think we shouldn't forget trust and security. That is one of the cornerstones, a preliminary condition for everything. And I just remind a word from one of the speakers who said, we need the trust of the citizens. Without the trust of the citizens, we cannot do the next steps. So saying that, not losing any more word, I promise, I would love to introduce one by one. So first, Dr. Thomas Krämer, member of the board of Deutsche Telekom, who is responsible also for data privacy. I'm curious to learn from you. Welcome. So, second, and I'm really proud and I'm curious, Dr. Maria Bader, coming from the Global Cyber Security Capacity Center of the University of Oxford. And what I didn't know, and for me was the first time, but she will talk much more later about that and much more better than me, they developed a kind of metric about how the societies and companies are already prepared for the cybersecurity, and they are studying about the measures if it comes to the human factor. That was the first time I heard about that. I'm really curious to learn from you. Thank you so much. Very proud special guest is Dr. Zuzana Prebilovic from Montenegro, Public Administration. I'm happy to having you here. Thank you very much for coming. So, Jakub Boratinsky. I learned that his nickname is Kuba. I tried to get some information if there's something to do with security and trust, Kuba, but we will learn about that. Thank you so much. And he's a person who is involved and adopted for the NIS directive in the European regulation. And of course, he's in constant discussion with organizations like ENISA. So we are so proud to have him here and learning and discussing with him about all these different topics there. Mr. Radoslav Ritso, I'm so sorry, from a company Telelink of Bulgaria. So I'm really happy having you here because more than 10 years of experience here in the region, and not only in the region and security. Why I'm so happy having him here. In his past, he made the experience of multinational integration and putting a lot of complicated projects into life. Thank you very much for coming. So, and last but not least, Montenegro as well, Dejan Abazovic. There. So, State Secretary, also Public Administration. Thank you so much for coming. And now music and dance. So, first of all, we heard in the morning that there were a couple of studies, but one study we discussed or touched at least in the morning. And I promise, normally I only put one question to the panelists to not get them too exhausted. But hearing in the morning about the study, I dare to ask you two questions. The first is, reading your study, I had the impression that the Western Balkan countries are a little bit lagging behind. So first question, of course, is how prepared is the Western Balkan region for digital transformation? And if we are talking about trust and security, is there really a, let's say, trust in cybersecurity then?
So, Mr. Moderator, these are important but hard to answer questions. So I would like to try it as follows. First of all, the study is about digitization. And what we all should keep in mind is digitization.
That was in music. Hello? Check, check.
So, perhaps
Houston, we have a problem.
hopefully it will start again. Yeah, it does. So thank you very much. So first important message is digitization, also in the Balkans, is changing everything. It's changing your private life. It's changing your business life, and it's changing society as a whole. Keep in mind. And this is going very fast. One example, if you think about, we have today around 8 billion connected devices in the Internet of Things, IoT, 8 billion. 2020, meaning in 2 years, we expect 50 billion connected devices.
Right?
50. So it's a huge, huge, huge number. And this gives us all an opportunity, because there are lots of opportunity related to digitization. Let's talk about healthcare. With digitization, you can improve the healthcare. And if you think about autonomous driving, you have less human casualties in a country having digitization. And it's a factor of growth. It's really supporting growth. But all these wonderful things, all these opportunities, they have one precondition. There is no digitization without security, because security is the basic for the trust of the people who are part of the digitization. So you need people's trust, and therefore I think this is really a very important issue. And if you talk about trust, the main issue we have at the moment are cyber attacks. Cyber attacks are real. This is not something you have in the books. Look in the media. Think about WannaCry. Think about Yahoo. Think about Uber. And the router attacks by IoT botnet. All this really happens. And we have to take it seriously. We have to take measures. And what is for this region very important is you cannot defend yourself alone. Macedonian is not able to defend itself alone because cyber attacks doesn't stop at national borders. They simply don't do it. So what we need is international cooperation to have cybersecurity, and we need, especially if you look at the cooperation between Balkans and Europe, we need European standards on security, which are binding European standards of security, not only for critical infrastructures, but for all devices connected to the internet. And you have to gain the trust, it is also very important that you make transparent what these standards are. And perhaps looking at the businesses, also there we can do a lot. First thing, cybersecurity as security as a whole needs management attention. It's nothing just to the specialists alone. Management should look at it. And what they should also do, it's budget. Cybersecurity needs budget. So we have read a study where for security reasons about 2% of the IT budgets are available. This is not enough. We have to invest more, and this is a challenge for all the companies, not only in the Balkans, also in the other European member states. And we really also have to think about how we develop our software products, how we develop software. Today, with digitization, there is no other option that we just implement a principle like security by design to develop our products and services. This means, even in the beginning, when you think about a new product or new service, think about security. Just from the beginning. Then you get into a world which is much more secure than it is today. So what I would like to say to all of you is, please increase your efforts in your cybersecurity activities. We need more. This is true for companies and enterprises, and this is also true for public authorities and states. We simply have to take care, we have to increase our activities and then maintain the level we have reached, and this should be a reasonable level. And now I stop because I can talk about this forever.
It's okay. So, test. We had a cybersecurity attack. They hacked my micro. So, but I'm here again. So thank you very much. But we do have 6 hours. You know that. Do we have enough time? No? No. Kidding. So, Dr. Maria Bada, hearing that, I mean, you have issued a well-reflected study about the cybersecurity in the Balkans. Do Dr. Kramer's experience mirror your findings?
Yes, I will actually start by commenting the part of trust. I would say that there is trust from the user perspective, and actually there's a lot of trust, and that leads to the incidents that Dr. Kramer was referring to, WannaCry, phishing incidents. So it seems that users trust online services too much, blindly. And I will explain a little more. So I will try to be very short in presenting the findings of the cybersecurity capacity maturity assessment we conducted in January here in Fyrom, in the Republic of Macedonia. That was conducted as part of the development and the works towards the development of the national cybersecurity strategy of the country. We came to Skopje after the invitation of the Ministry of Information Society and Administration, of course, in collaboration with the World Bank. So I'm very happy to be here and actually talk about that exercise. Just to add that we've conducted similar assessments in Kosovo in 2015 and in Montenegro in 2015. So I'm kind of like now gaining an overall understanding of the needs of the region as well. So I will start briefly. I already mentioned that the country is in the process of developing the national cybersecurity strategy, and actually that's one of the essential steps towards advancing capacity. And that doesn't mean that it is essential because you will have a strategy. It needs to go further than that, implement that kind of strategy, have specific actions. And I'm very happy to see that the Republic of Macedonia is actually following the right path. Regarding incident response, we've seen that the country already established a national incident response team since 2015. So we actually see that there is capacity to kind of identify incidents, but also overcome those incidents. I will be speaking a little bit about different issues as you will see, because the model that we developed back in Oxford, touches every aspect of cybersecurity. So trust is also one part of that. So apart from policy and strategy, incident response, the kind of essential issues that you would expect a country to kind of possess when we talk about resilience, infrastructure resilience especially. What we've identified in this part is that there's a lack of formal categorization of critical infrastructure assets. So basically there's a lack of identifying what the critical assets are and categorizing them, not only categorizing them, but also communicating those to all the relevant stakeholders. Moving on to other issues on cybersecurity culture and society, and that's actually, as I was mentioning before, one of the interesting findings in this study. Users blindly tend to trust online services, especially when those online services come from abroad, international websites. And that is not the case only for FIRM, for the Republic of Macedonia. It's a general, actually, trend.
I would like to ask, is that a very specific momentum here in the Western Balkans, or how would you explain, or see with the same? It's general.
It's general.
So you say, I'm doing the same, yeah?
Yes, we've conducted the similar exercise in the UK 2 years ago. In Iceland, in Lithuania, it's the same trend. So that goes back to what was being discussed in the previous panel, awareness raising, education. It's not just about trusting and using e-commerce services or e-government services. It's about knowing how to safely use those services. And we see that there's a gap there. There's a blind trust trend in general, regardless of where you are, to be honest. Also, we've seen that the country possesses various reporting mechanisms for incidents. So someone could actually report an incident to the cybercrime unit, to the police, but we've seen that according to what stakeholders were mentioning, users are not necessarily aware of those mechanisms. So someone that would be a victim of an attack wouldn't necessarily know what to do. And that goes back to the awareness part. So we have identified here, similarly to other countries as well, that the lack of a national level awareness program is actually leading to that kind of behaviors online, starting from school children, going to adults, teenagers, all groups, age groups. Another issue which was also discussed in the previous panel was education, training, and skills. And in that, we have identified as well that there's a big gap. And again, this is not only the case for the Republic of Macedonia. We see that even in countries where there are plenty of offerings of master's degrees, bachelor degrees in cybersecurity, again, there's a gap of skilled workforce. And the UK is also trying to identify why that is the case. Is it because, as it was explained before, of brain drainage, people are getting trained or educated and then they leave the country? So that, again, leaves the gap. So we've seen that in the Republic of Macedonia, there's only one master's degree certified in cybersecurity, so there are limited offerings. So that is a gap that needs to be fulfilled, and I was very happy to hear that this is actually part of the action plan, so that is quite good. When it comes to awareness raising programs, there are different ad hoc initiatives coming either from academia or from NGOs, but there isn't a national level program. That will be part of the strategy and the action plan, so that again will be covered. When it comes to training, there isn't necessarily a requirement that someone has to have a specific degree to join a position, and that was one of the findings. So it's not a necessity or a requirement. And I will try to go faster. When it comes to legislation and regulation, as the Prime Minister was explaining this morning, there are different provisions within the regulatory frameworks in the country. However, the law will be updated to follow the demands, the current needs, actually. Regarding the investigative capacity, so once there is a cybercrime case, there is capacity to kind of prosecute and investigate such a case, but that is quite limited. So that is another gap that has to be fulfilled. We touched also issues on formal and informal cooperation and building public-private partnerships, and we've seen that, again, formal cooperation mechanisms have been established, but the informal cooperation mechanisms tend to be more effective, and I can touch later on that, and especially when it comes to incident response.
Perfect to hand over to the Minister of Public Administration, Pribilovic, because talking about legislation, regulation, how are you prepared in Montenegro also about the general aspects of legislation, but also probably about harmonization between the Western Balkan countries? Just explain a little bit your more general view on that topic, please.
Hvala vam puno na postavljenom pitanju, ali bih prije svega iskoristila priliku da izrazim stvarno jedno izuzetno zadovoljstvo i čast što sam danas u prilici da učestvujem na ovom samitu, posebno jer se tiče digitalnog samita zemalja Zapadnog Balkana, jer smo svi mi svjesni u procesu pregovora i negdje naše obaveze da digitalizujemo naše zemlje suočeni sa istim izazovima. I negdje mi se čini našom zajedničkom energijom, saradnjom, intenzivnom, da ćemo sve te izazove lakše prevazići i našim građanima, u stvari građanima naših država, obezbijediti životne standarde i u ovoj oblasti na nivou koje to imaju zemlje članice Evropske unije. Negdje kao pravnik razmišljala sam, obzirom da je tema cyber bezbjednost, povjerenje i bezbjednost, kao pravnik da moram podijeliti sa vama jedno moje lično iskustvo nakon što je konstituisana ova vlada. U vrijeme kada ste vjerovatno upoznati da smo imali velike cyber napade u vrijeme samih izbora i konstituisanjem nove vlade, premijer kad mi je povjerio ovo ministarstvo koje je po prvi put formirano u Crnoj Gori, došla sam sa idejom da se bavim reformom državne uprave, lokalne samouprave, nevladinog sektora saradnje, normativom, političkim partijama, upravnom inspekcijom i u toj situaciji tako intenzivnih cyber napada koji su se nastavili u tokom čitave 2017. godine je u stvari za mene bilo jedno veliko buđenje da sistem i državu, ukoliko ne obezbijedimo siguran cyber prostor, ne možemo ni reformisati ni ići naprijed. Po pitanju cyber bezbjednosti mogu reći da je Crna Gora ostvarila do sad značajne rezultate, imajući u vidu da već dugi niz godina imamo zakon o informacionoj bezbjednosti koji je u najvećoj mogućoj mjeri usaglašen sa pravnom normativom Evropske unije i onim strateškim ciljevima i normativima NATO-a. Također imamo u dosadašnjem periodu dvije strategije cyber bezbjednosti, jedna čiji je životni vijek bio 2013-2017. godina i upravo krajem 2017. godine je vlada usvojila novu strategiju cyber bezbjednosti za period 2018-2021. i početkom ove godine je usvojen i donijet akcioni plan koji podrazumijeva i obuhvata sve one aktivnosti koje ćemo u narednom periodu preduzimati kako bismo ostvarili one strateške ciljeve kad je cyber bezbjednost u pitanju. Ono isto tako što mogu istaći jeste da u normativnom dijelu, eto kažem da smo dosta toga postigli, isto tako formiran je nacionalni CIR tim kao jedna od organizacionih jedinica unutar samog ministarstva koja se bavi kako prevencijom, tako i sprečavanjem ili misanjem cyber napada koji nam se dešavaju i brinu se o samoj infrastrukturi. I značajno istaći da i unutar same države, kada su državni organi u pitanju lokalne samouprave, imamo formiranih 31 nacionalni CIR tim i oni nesporno su u svakodnevnoj i neposrednoj komunikaciji sa nacionalnim CIRT timom i ono što je nesporno da međunarodna saradnja na kojoj mi stvarno ćemo insistirati i u narednom periodu kao i u prethodnom je najveći potencijal gdje možemo ostvariti najbolje rezultate, pokupiti najbolje prakse i obezbijediti jedan siguran cyber prostor u Crnoj Gori.
Great, thank you so much. It's very interesting that you already talked about facing, hello, test, again, Houston. So facing cyber attacks and your reaction on the national level, very impressive. Thank you so much. But it's then the question to Mr. Boratinsky, hearing what happened on a national level and then seeing your role in the European theater, let's say, what has the EU to offer and what might be then the pan-national role of structures like ENISA or others?
Question. I hope I can be heard. It's absolutely a great pleasure to be here, given the importance of this event, also the moment we are in the EU, which is actually now just ahead of a very important milestone, which would be the transposition of first ever cybersecurity legislation in the European Union and NIS directive into national law. But I think you've heard it from the Commissioner Maria Gabriel this morning. You know, we cannot have a successful digital revolution if indeed those elements of trust and security are not ensured. And Dr. Thomas Kramer, I think, has provided a very powerful examples of why it matters. Now, asking about the role of the EU, I think, you know, it's useful somehow to maybe go back a few years ago. You know, we have been in a way quite careful at European level in not in a way moving too fast. I mean, of course, the digital revolution, everything that internet has opened up has been a wonderful story, basically, an adventure. And in this, it is very important we do not actually regulate in a too heavy-handed manner. I think what has pushed us to action also at the regulatory field was this realization that in a borderless space, that is the cyberspace, we are very much mutually interdependent. And that also means that vulnerability of someone else becomes our own vulnerability. So one of the main really driving forces for coming up with European approach was this idea that we need to actually reach a certain minimum level, because the differences were huge. I mean, so there were some countries, some member states of the Union, which can be seen as like, let's say, being at the top of the global league, and there were some who were quite far behind. So what is indeed the role of the NIS directive is trying to make sure that we have a very solid baseline. Solid baseline means few practical things. First of all, that basically governments take their own responsibility by investing, and I think indeed the question of investment here is essential in having basically responsible authorities, also having national computer security and response teams that actually create this kind of basic backbone of let's say, public policy in the area of cybersecurity. So now basically everyone has to do it. Secondly, we have created a situation that basically we recognize that of course the things that companies do, which is to take security measures, that actually has to become also a legal obligation. So we have indeed moved to a new situation when the companies that provide very important services to the society, to the economy, will be actually subject of legal obligations. They will have to manage the cybersecurity risks in a proper manner. And it was very interesting that we also realized that it is not only about traditional critical sectors such as transport, finance, or energy, but also, for example, cloud service becomes a critical infrastructure for European companies. This is actually now happening, and this is going to be indeed a very important important change. And finally, what is NIS directive doing is creating basically a culture, or really fostering culture of cooperation. Cooperation between public and private sector, but first and foremost between member states, because exactly, you know, we cannot tackle cybersecurity threats and challenges exclusively within the national borders. So it is really a very, very actually useful and powerful tool in bringing member states together. I mean, we already see a very practical discussions on how, for example, to secure cybersecurity of elections, how to make sure that basically specific obligations that companies will have in different member states would be somehow aligned. And I think it is also important to speak about this here. I mean, I was very interesting to listen to the presentation of the representative of the Montenegrin government, because indeed this is one of the countries that is using the legislative developments in the cybersecurity area as a blueprint, you know, for what can be done. And, you know, and ultimately NIS directive is not something very, it's not a rocket science. It's really about the basic stuff. What is now going to happen that with the transposition we will gather extremely valuable experience of how actually things work in practice, where perhaps we haven't done the job sufficiently well, where things need to improve. And there would be also a wealth of data which would be generated for the first time by a legal obligation for the companies to report serious incidents. That is a great wealth of learning to be done. And again, this is the type of learning and lessons that I think the European Union would definitely like to share with its strategic partners, notably in this region. ENISA is now, as you know, is a European agency for cybersecurity. With the Cybersecurity Act, that is the proposal adopted at the time of the State of the Union of the European Union in September last year, the intention of the Cybersecurity Act is indeed to reinforce the mandate of ENISA that is fit for purpose, and actually it's very important in that context to walk the talk, and that's why Commission has proposed to considerably increase resources of ENISA so that it can actually do the job better. And of course our intention would be that even though there are of course limitations on ENISA in terms of cooperation with third countries, indeed there is a number of, let's say, open formats of cooperation where this can also benefit. And maybe last element that I would like to add is the fact that, you know, I think we have really moved a long way from this maybe a little bit sort of naive perception that, you know, that security kind of will come naturally. We see quite a fundamental asymmetry in terms of information between users, being it small companies, but even bigger companies, big individual consumers, and the providers of cybersecurity solutions and products. And that's why the Commission came up with the initiative, which is, by the way, also very strongly supported by the industry, recognizing we moved to a new level with introducing a system of voluntary cybersecurity certification. This is a proposal that is being now negotiated, but we believe, in a way, of course, it would be a European certification system, but it will be open to all companies, you know, including from that region. And we really very much hope that once the framework is in place, once a few years down the road, European certificates will be issued, that they can be actually a really serious competitive advantage for the companies that would decide to undergo this type of certification process. Thank you.
Hearing that Thomas Kremer has said security and trust is a precondition to whatever changes there to come. Hearing then the reality and the findings of Dr. Bada, and last but not least, Mr. Pribilovic facing the cyber attacks in reality in Montenegro, and having then on a supranational level the ENISA, or not only as ENISA, but the let's say support from a supranational level, coming to you, Mr. Ritzov, from a perspective of the industry and having the experience in a multinational projects, would you wish then more a, let's say, stronger impact and role of the industry? Or what, from the experience you have, what would you love to have then for the future?
Thank you. I'll try to keep my statements as short as possible and as sharp as possible. But coming from the industry and working in various countries, what I can highlight and bringing the discussion from the other panelists before me is that the industry can bring a lot of value. And definitely what we're having here, the multi-stakeholder dialogue, is essential in terms of building trust and moving forward in terms of when we speak about cybersecurity. But what I would like to point here is that governments across the regions are constantly increasing their approaches towards cybersecurity via various strategies, laws, and regulations. However, we have a different level of maturity, what we just heard. And so different entities have been appointed with the responsibility to respond for cybersecurity with different mandate and with different structures. So if we would like to make the next step, essentially NISA is extremely important, but our understanding is that we should have and we should start building national cybersecurity agencies in each and every country with clear mandate, with clear responsibilities, with clear structure, how they address the cybersecurity.
If you are asking for that entities, is it more on a certification level, or what is the role these entities should have? Please shed a little bit light on that.
Yeah. So at the moment, we have the CSIRTs who are the response teams. But what I would like to have a broader agency and a broader capabilities of them delivering the message. And here, we don't speak about only certification. We can speak about general awareness of the public. And what we heard is that we're having issues with people being not well educated in terms of cybersecurity. So this should be the single focal point when we discuss cybersecurity in each and every country. And I consider it to be the same in every country to respond to the more complex attacks. We are having a huge issue if we're trying to respond differently and not coherently to attacks that are extremely comprehensive and extremely well prepared.
Okay. Thank you so much. Then, Mr. Bazovic, hearing that, a more broader question, but how's cyber ready, so to say, do you feel as a public administration of Montenegro then? You could extend that, but I'm curious to hear that with all the experience from the others.
Thank you. Before I answer your question, I need to say thank you for a warm welcome, and I'm really proud to be here with you on this stage and with this fine and great people, and of course with this fine public here what listening us. Are we ready or not? I think it is the question which you can ask anybody of the country from the Western Balkan, and the answer will be the same. But the right question is, as I think, are we ready to achieve these goals, what we have here in this summit? And the question is, are we ready and are we harmonized? Readiness and harmonizations for each of the country we can put in the view or put it on two levels. First levels is the country levels. Are we ready and what we did inside the country, and what we did and how we ready and harmonized to be the part of the region and to be the part of the same area which is interested to be the same digital area. When we're talking about our country level, I have to say that we have almost the same situation, and I think Prime Minister Zaev talked about it this morning on the Premier's panel when he said that in Macedonia they need to make more coordination, when I'm talking, it has to be 3 times. Thank you. I fully agree with him when he said that they need to make some effort and make more coordination between the government state bodies. Why? Almost everyone of state bodies developed their own information system and made they, how can I say, electronic data on his own way. It is our legacy. And what we have now put it on the level which will be enough to prepare us for something what is surrounding us every day and prepare us for the approach to the European Union. I don't have any other answers than I can say we have implement standards in our everyday practice. But how to implement standard, it is not one kind of the standard which we can implement. We need to have holistic approach. And that holistic approach means that we need to implement, I'll say it with the language of the standards, we need to implement information security management system. We need to implement operation risk management system. We need to implement business continuity management system. And of course, inside our information system, we need to implement something what is called IT service management. Then we can talk about security. And then after implementation in practice, not just in paper like legislative, we can talk about our readiness and we can talk about our harmonization. It is about security. And of course, coordination as a principle to achieve these 2 main goals.
Test. Hello? Okay.
Now?
Try again,
Yes.
please.
We can continue now. Thank you. And sorry of course. It was about security. And what is about trust? When we're talking about trust, I'm talking with common language. I'm talking common problems. I'm talking about common issues in all of the country from the Western Balkan. What is when we're talking about trust? from my perspective, I think we have 2 points of view. One is, as you said at the beginning from the stage, when you announce us, can we trust to our user or customers? But also the question for us is, can the user and customer or consumer can trust us? And if we have that point of view, we have some kind of obligation which are not so low, and we need to do something for them. If we give them a digital signature, we can recognize them and we can trust them. But if he, with that signature, approach to our service, as example to the government service, can he trust us? What we doing with his data and his need and everything what he lived on our premises? What we doing with that? And how we governing with that data and everything? You read, or you were in situation to hear 1 month ago about the problem with Facebook users and how Facebook deal that data around the world. Yes, and it is very big question, but also that we have that 2 point of view with which we have approach to that question when we're talking about the trust. But also we have, for the trust, we have two levels. How can we deal with it and how we can act to achieve the main 2 goals which I said at the beginning, readiness and harmonization. Also, on a country level, we can to improve our infrastructure and to organize the providers of the certificates and the carriers of the digital certificates on the level like they need to be. Concretely, in Montenegro, we need to do something more. We have 1 providers for the digital certificate, but it is not enough. Except the private company, we need certification bodies from the telecommunication sectors. Why we can't have digital certificate on our mobile phones? We need government to act and to give the citizens digital certificates on our ID card. What is with banks and the others? So we need to do much more about it. When we're talking about second level and region, we're talking about same what Europe already did. I'll just remember you that 29th of September this year, notification of the national certification body will be mandatory for the Europe. I'm talking about EIDAS regulative.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Very wise words. So, of course, we learned that trust is not only that we, from a public sector, have to enroll and to engage applications, but the people have to trust into how the government, but also the providers, deal with their data. You mentioned also Facebook, one of the huge scandals that we will see what that kind of impact will bring to all of us. One of the what you told us is popping up in my mind a question. I mean, I ask you about how cyber ready is Montenegro, and I have to say, talking about Germany, where I come from, in the 90s we released a Digital Signing Act, so it's the equivalent of the handwritten signature, right? So trying to get the people put trust into the electronic signature, so making for a lawyer the equivalent to that. And till today, I have to say, and shame, Germany is far away from being a digital wonderland. So asking you how cyber ready is Montenegro and seeing 20 years of work in Germany, and we are far away from the digitalization we heard in the morning. So that, forgive me, but that brings me a question to Dr. Kramer then. How see you the leveraging factor or the role of the industry in bringing or speeding up with that process of bringing the trust and the applications needed to a broader use?
Thank you very much. A very good
Question, I know.
No, it's not rhetorical. It's a very, very serious question. So there are many answers on that one. The first should be one of the key elements to create trust is to create awareness. We have heard it from not only one panelist. Yeah? So from my perspective, there's also a role for industry to play, to create awareness with consumers about cybersecurity, IT security, is not only a task for public authorities. This is, for me, a perfect example for public partnerships. What we have one in Germany, which is called Deutschland sicher im Netz, or Germany secure in the internet.
It's not so bad as I told. Yes, you're right. Yeah, there are some.
Yeah, there are some, and we reach about 100,000 people a month with the activities of this association. So private industry can do something. Second one is when we are providing as industry, as companies, security applications, we have to think about the user. So we must have simple to use tools. This is so easy to say. It's so easy. But if you then ask a consumer how easy really our encryption instruments, for example, are.
Asking, do you have a very easy tools from Deutsche Telekom, ease of use? So make it easy peasy like Japanesey for everybody?
We try to do so, and this is called Volksverschlüsselung. Yeah, this is an encryption element. We have now about 7,000 users for this instrument in Germany. So it's failure. Yeah, so it doesn't have the effects we needed. So we have to think about other solutions. Another element which is really important is make transparent as an internet provider what you do with the data of your customers. This is really, really, really important, as you said, also from my perspective. So, and in a digitized world, you can only do this with an app. If you don't have an app which can make transparent, like a dashboard, what has really happened with the data, there will be no trust. Because cases like Facebook are really undermining the trust of the people. So we have to do something. Yeah? Providing apps where consumer can see how their data are used is, from my perspective, a very good instrument. And there's more to come.
Then, hearing that, if I remember well, Mrs. Prebilovic mentioned that there is also a need of public-private partnership. Mrs. Prebilovic, just one short question. Do you wish then companies like Deutsche Telekom or Telelink to join with you for the efforts in Montenegro, just as an example, for the problems to come for public-private partnerships?
Što se tiče Telekoma, tu mogu reći da mi već imamo izuzetnu saradnju i jedan partnerski odnos sa Telelinkom. Ja mislim da do sad nisam imala kontakata i iskustava, ali sam otvorena, znači za svaki vid saradnje, ne ja lično, nego Ministarstvo i Vlada Crne Gore. Sve ono što je u interesu građana i zaštite u ovoj oblasti smo spremni, već preduzimamo i preduzimat ćemo u narednom periodu. A kada je Telekom u pitanju, mi upravo kroz postupak javne nabavke nam je ključni operater u obezbeđivanju linkova i imam lično iskustvo ne samo kada je Telekom na nivou Crne Gore u pitanju, nego i Hrvatske, koliko nam je bila podrška i pomoć u ostvarivanju potpune zaštite u prethodnom periodu kada su cyber napadi bili u pitanju.
Great. Mr. Ritzov, because you shared also some ideas about that topic, that very topic, what do you think, what is still needed? Is what we are hearing from the different ideas, is that enough? Or from your perspective, also from an industry like Dr. Schremers, is there something missing? What would you wish, or what has to come more?
Well, to be honest, we're having, as I said already, a very complex attacks. And when we speak about this, I can throw some figures that 75% of organizations are expected to be hacked. By 2020, there is an estimate that $3 trillion will be gained by cyber criminals. And so many IT companies, and this is my understanding as well, joined to propose the so-called Digital Geneva Convention. And I think it's the time to acknowledge that we should make it a worldwide topic where all governments and private companies should join forces to tackle this issue. And this is my kind of input on that. And when we speak about the Digital Geneva Convention, we can very easily refer to the fourth Geneva Convention, where the Red Cross is accepted as a necessity every time there is a war. And now we have to ensure that the private companies are somehow the Red Cross in the Digital Geneva Convention, and that their input is taken into account.
Hearing that, and hearing also your first statement about, let's say, a local or regional government entities with a strict and strong agenda for interacting, putting the question that to Mr. Boratinsky, Cuba, is that undermining the role of ENISA, or do we hear a little bit of skepticism in the, let's say, pan-national institutions, that we need more on the regional level, of course with cooperation, or do I overdo it now?
I
share that
I would
skepticism?
start maybe with a sort of a very general statement. I mean, there is in a way a role for a very different type of settings and formats and groups. I mean, but we just simply have to see, let's say, what can and cannot be done in certain settings. What's good about the EU that actually we can go quite far. So we cannot just simply agree on declarations, on sort of, commitments, voluntary commitments, but we can actually, if there is a sufficient degree of support, we can make it into a law, and we can actually also then see and have a very practical tools jointly with member states to see how the things are implemented in practice. Also, if you look at the public-private partnerships, of course, there is a very important role for that at a national level. We have managed to pull it off, European cybersecurity public-private partnership, which is mostly about research and innovation. So this is definitely a way forward. Now, we certainly need different type of industry-led initiatives, also global initiatives. That's why the European Union is engaged on cyber issues with a multitude of important countries and partners, US, China, just to give one, to India, to give some notable examples. So in a way, we can see it as a sort of a big concerted effort. At the same time, what is in a way our strength in the EU, or maybe more widely in a transatlantic community, but even that you may see some slight differences, is indeed a certain common approach and common understanding what, for example, issues, what actually cybersecurity really is about, that ultimately is about also, protecting basically freedoms, protecting privacy, creating a certain barrier to also the degree to which governments can regulate this area. You know, if you engage with some of our international partners in the discussion of what cybersecurity means, you know, you may not necessarily have the same things in mind. So I think all of that has to be really taken into account. I mean, clearly the EU, the European Commission, you know, has an open mind about any initiatives that can actually foster cybersecurity, that can build some trust, that can increase confidence. Thank you.
Okay, so I mean, we are not at the end. I do not like to summarize right now, but hearing that or understanding that, we see that we would need, and probably that's a difficult thing if it comes to trust, we have to provide for different levels of security, on the human factor level, on the privacy level of private companies, company-wise, regional governments, supranational. So that's a complicated thing, because it's like a complicated pyramid, and it's not only on one of these slices at all, but we have to face these things on every slice. Question to Dr. Bader then. Understanding your results in the study or your experience, how looks alike then in practice these kind of I would say cooperation or communication over the different levels?
This is how it is, and we've heard that within different sectors, there are implications, whether that might be depending on regulations, legislation, different requirements. Cooperation and clear channels of communication are definitely the basis for cybersecurity success. If we are trying to build safe cyberspace, we need to involve, first of all, everyone, starting from users, going to the public sector, the private sector, and promote that kind of cooperation, but also the openness. There are certain stereotypes in cybersecurity, such as, for example, an incident can cause reputation damage for a nation or an organization. So that kind of stereotype is we kind of see that kind of being minimized step by step, gradually, but it's still there. So the openness, the open communication and collaboration can lead definitely to trust. And trust is what we need to promote cybersecurity.
In a broader aspect, I mean, the threat landscape goes far beyond even the European Union, right? I mean, we are talking about the Western Balkan countries, we are talking about European Union, but we know that most of the threats, sometimes I hear in the radio, coming from North Korea even, I do not know if that is the truth or not, flying to Skopje in the very early morning, I heard the first message I put on the radio, I heard a message from our security organization saying we have to be prepared for a cyber attack from somewhere far in the east within the next months. So hearing that these threats are global, I would say, and Deutsche Telekom, forgive me, is probably the biggest global speaker here in the round. I would hand over the question to you then. What can smaller countries, but also industry alike, because most of them are local, what is your idea, or do you have experience, how can they face and counteract to these threats? Is there any answer to that?
From my perspective, the most important element of an answer is collaboration. What does it mean? Public authorities and industries and businesses should make transparent when they are attacked and how they are attacked. Only when we all learn about it, we learn about the attacks, we can make our own systems more secure. So
Of transparency then.
this is not only transparency, but it's a key thing. From my perspective, it's much easy. It's quite easy that companies are transparent to authorities because you can force them by regulation. But the other way around is much more difficult. Ask public authorities to make transparent how they are attacked. You do not get really significant answers to that one.
Tried that?
Sure, sure, yeah. But this is one of the issues we should really think about, yeah? How can public authority be more transparent to private industries, to the self, especially who have the knowledge, who perhaps know the solution for a certain attack? We should be transparent. This will create a much better and much secure world in the digitization. The second thing is, perhaps we should forget about backdoors. Yeah, meaning we should forget to create vulnerabilities intentionally in software products.
So you mean, forgetting about that, everybody should get free of it, so not doing that? But how would you, sorry for the next question, so even for the other panelists, you are completely allowed to interact with each other, right? So how would you control that? How could we manage then? If we say all together here on the podium today, it would be great, we are signing a contract that nobody is having a backdoor again. You think that would work?
Basically, I think at least on the national level this should work. Why? Because there should be a basis for that one in the law. So I still trust that public authorities are following the rule of law. That's the one thing. And the other thing, it will become public anyhow. It's only a matter of time when this vulnerability will just be visible and transparent, and then you know. So there is basically no way out. Yeah? So this is, from my perspective, also a very meaningful tool to make our digitized world more secure.
Great, thank you. But that does mean that we need, coming then a little bit then again to ENISA or somebody else, we need, in the end, we need a kind of supranational cooperation for the discussion and finding the same wording, the same regulation, the same framework for the rules, let's say. So that is what you say, right? You agree, Mr. Boratinsky?
At the general level, of course, it's super difficult to do it in practice. But of course, we are hopefully going to get some tools. And I think a good example of that is that through the European certification framework, we may have a mechanism when basically public authorities, with the input from the industry, can actually agree on certain ways of, for example, how we are going to test software from a cybersecurity perspective. And I think it's very much important when we talk about this specific example that, of course, there is never a software 100% secure. But basically the trick, the way forward is indeed to find an agreement on the standards, on the methodology, how this type of, for example, constant monitoring of vulnerabilities, disclosure of vulnerabilities, how this process, is managed in a responsible manner. And that actually is, a practical step forward to actually help the users, help the consumers to actually to use the products that are more secure. I'm on purpose saying more secure because we should be crystal clear. There will be never 100% security, and all what we are doing is what we are doing, what we are talking is basically how to manage the risks in a more professional, responsible, and consistent manners. And that's why, of course, the awareness is so important, that awareness of the users about the fact that there is a limit to which, I can be fully secure.
A question to Mr. Ritzov then, an unallowed question. Forgive me, because you are not talking on the behalf of Bulgarian government, I know, but as we see now the upcoming EU presidency and hearing that, Do you can imagine, even with your experience from the industry, do you can imagine a kind of special role or value add from that EU presidency?
Absolutely. Yep, absolutely, yes. We clearly demonstrated that Western Balkans topic should be a top priority. And it's one of the 4 pillars, actually, during our 6 months of presidency. This is essential. We initiated the discussion, and what we're seeing here today is partially thanks to the efforts of our government. And I see it as a very practical way how we can continue this discussion. This morning, Maria Gabriel told that there will be a digital agenda for the Western Balkans, which of course can help countries move forward in that direction. And to me, it's extremely valuable, and to all people, I think, in the region, to discuss the challenges and to align our efforts.
Okay, thank you. So, now it's time that I try to, let's play the music and let's ask somebody if you would like to place some question to the auditorium. Don't be shy, all nice people. If not, I will ask you, and you will have to, you know, write a test about all the work they provided to you. Nobody? See, you've made the whole word, and they're just waiting. Okay.
If you allow me to, I can make a kind of a small comment on what we just heard. And I think that we should definitely think of more often having such kind of a discussions on kind of annual meetings, which are worldwide meetings. Like, for example, we're having elections every 3-4 years. We're having a G5, 7 NIB summits, whatever. So why don't we think of having a regular meetings where all the countries will participate, or we will have this multi-stakeholder dialogue, and this is going to happen annually, for instance, if we would like to address that issue, because obviously it's an issue, and we're having a cyber crimes and cyber criminals happening across the globe, and it just said, in my personal belief, we will see less and less actual wars and more cyber security, and but cyber wars. So we cannot wait 20 to 30 years to see the results. We should act now.
Definitely, if I got the idea right, I mean, you suggest something like a common interchange, a meeting between, but which parties you would like to invite? I mean, we heard in the morning that on that West Balkan level, at least, they plan to have that now on a regular basis. If I understand you, it should be somehow extended. What would be the format then?
Well, it could happen in the beginning on a regional level and then to be consolidated on a worldwide. But we should have a presence by all respective actors. And by all respective actors, I mean the non-profit organizations, the public sector, and the private companies. These are all actors in the cybersecurity domain.
From an academic perspective, hearing that, I mean, it sounds logic, it sounds very good. You developed at the University of Oxford and with your working group a kind of metric about how cyber ready we all are. I learned I'm not. Would you agree, and what would the, let's say, academic view on how to push forward the trust into this whole society, not only into the government and expert groups, but in the whole society? What would be your approach?
Yes, as an academic, I would definitely agree. We have to realize, if we haven't already, that when we talk about cybersecurity, we should involve everyone. The multi-stakeholder approach, of course, I think all of us, we agree that that is the way forward. When it comes to trust, I've done a little research on that. From the 22 countries that we've kind of assessed and we applied our metrics, our model in, we've seen that when it comes to trust and collaboration, there are some difficulties, especially starting from people and countries are easily showing trust and a tendency to collaborate with neighboring countries. So at a regional level, things are quite easier than going at the European and then at the international level, depending whether that is a national CSERT or that is any other capacity or asset in the country. To build trust, again, I will bring in the human factor. We've seen, and I'm sure in your practice, you've seen that personal relationships are also very important. Trust builds on knowing, communicating, speaking to each other, realizing what the difficulties at the national level, international level. So I would definitely agree that bringing stakeholders, different stakeholders together, communicating, sharing experiences is absolutely the way forward.
Okay, yeah, please.
Yeah, maybe some reflection on cooperation. And I say it's someone who is somehow in this field for quite a while. I before worked more on the cybercrime side. More I see it, I think more I'm convinced that we cannot talk about any sort of well-structured hierarchical system, because this is what we are seeing basically in this area is an extremely complex mesh of different type of mechanisms, sometimes super informal, that actually make overall the cybersecurity community of practitioners actually still alive and kicking, and I mean still relatively successful. We of course by default we always present the half glass empty to basically mobilize everyone, but we do have to realize also what's being done. So just to give you a few examples, I mean, sometimes it's extremely difficult to overcome the silos. You know, we have the silo, which is the law enforcement silo of dealing with cybercrime, the cybersecurity community, intelligence community is dealing with of course issues from their angle. Cybersecurity is very, very difficult to be compartmentalized, but of course the administrative legal structures do create some degree of for understandable reasons, limitation. But at the same time what we see, and this is this importance of a personal contact, we have technical communities that actually do cooperate on a daily basis, you know, across different silos. It is primarily, one good example is indeed the CERT community or CCERT community, global community of CERTs, which is organized again in a very complex manner, because we have like our formal network in the EU, but we also have a big global network called FIRST, and many, many other networks like that. And of course, ultimately, it's not even about networks, it's about people actually who prove themselves useful to each other in dealing with specific issues. The same if you look into the world of business, of industry, you know, we, Commission, of course, we are naturally focused on legislation, but if you look at our recent policy pronouncement about cybersecurity package, there are a lot of measures that go far beyond legislation. You know, we want, for example, to facilitate and help rollout of ISACs, which are voluntary private sector-led schemes, which started in the US, but they are, let's say, available in Europe, but you know, there is something we can still do to help. Or the most recent initiative, which anyway would probably soon show, no, not probably, it will soon be presented on creating a competent European competence center for research, and also a network of competence center across Europe, which again would bring together capacities in terms of research, innovation, and industrial potential, so that we actually are able to produce in Europe cybersecurity solutions and products. So again, there are a lot of initiatives, and we will not have a sort of a neat hierarchy organized picture in that respect, and this is good actually.
then forgive me if I, but to everybody of you, put a very, I would not say academic question, forgive me for that, a question. Hearing that, I ask myself, we have developed over decades international frameworks for other weapons, like the ban of landmines, chemical weapons. We have several treaties. I mean, we see that different regions in the world have quite different and rather different interpretation of that, but anyhow, we have these frameworks. What I do not see is any supranational discussion about is there is a kind of ban for cybersecurity attacks, at least for state actors. Is there, do we need that? Do we need that discussion? Or is it good enough that all of us agree and that we need to implement more, you know, interchange of the threats, putting up with public-private partnerships, push more applications, useful applications, trustful applications in the world. But what I do not see in the moment is, or asking you, do we need that more broader approach of banning cyber attacks, and then in which framework? I don't know. Completely open question. But brings that last, you know, statements to my mind, asking myself. Who likes to answer?
Perhaps I try the first one. Yes, I would like to have such a convention, perhaps on the United Nations level, and we are discussing such a convention since years, at least on the Munich Security Conference. This is a current topic, but I see no action. There are discussions and discussions and discussions. I see no actions because the states are not prepared. They are not prepared to just don't use cyber weapons in a sort of conflict. So what you then can discuss is whether we should at least, as states, not support cybercrime. This would be, let's say, a sort of an easy way. But even in this respect,
common denominator, let's say.
Yes, exactly. I see some progress in this respect, but no convention, let's say, in the near horizon. So even if we wish that we get such a solution, we cannot trust that it will come in the near future. So we have no alternative than just to do our, let's say, day-to-day work in fighting against cyber attacks, in cooperating and looking for solutions with the CERTs, setting up database where we store all the malwares which are known so that we can easily, not so easy, so we are in a position to just have the security updates and so on. This we can do. I dream about such a convention,
Great.
but
Let's see.
well, we'll see.
From your academic insight, do you see any discussion going into that direction? In the academic world, at least?
I think that if we take it philosophically, I'm sure everyone wishes for that kind of a solution that would actually solve most of our issues at this point. But how could that be implemented? We kind of see governments, and even at the European level, discussing whether, you know, following specific standards should be mandatory or voluntary, whether incidents should be disclosed in a very mandatory way or not. We see strict legislation coming up. We see actually people ready to sacrifice their data, their freedom online for security. Bringing it in a philosophical way, I would say that yes, this is what we want, but I think that strict legislation would lead to losing some of the benefits of the internet. So I would actually contradict, yes, this is a good solution, it could solve problems, but is this what we want? Strict legislation, very restricted use of the internet?
Mrs. Privilovic, are you ready to, as Montenegro government, would you sign such ban of these kinds of weapons? Theoretical question.
malo sam zatečena sad pitanjem, da vam iskreno kažem, da odgovorim u ovom trenutku, ali ono što bi bilo u interesu opšte zaštite, ne samo Crne Gore, nego regiona i šire, Crna Gora bi sigurno podržala jednu takvu inicijativu, ali negdje me ovo sve inspirisalo da samo dodam, jer se negdje bavimo globalnim stvarima, u stvari u Crnoj Gori sam vidjela koliko znači osnovna ta cyber kultura i u stvari to je početak svega jer mi smo u sistemu, imajući u vidu da smo insistirali na obukama državnih službenika i namještenika, a i samih građana i počev od djece u školama uz pomoć Ministarstva prosvjete, vidjela sam koliko je u stvari ta osnovna cyber kultura bitna kako bi u velikoj mjeri spriječili, u stvari prevenirali da ne bi došlo do cyber napada. I mislim da sve mi zemlje Zapadnog Balkana posebnu pažnju trebamo upravo usredsrediti u tome. Mi to radimo sa upravom za kadrove, Ministarstvo javne uprave i uprava za kadrove. U početku smo iskreno rečeno imali otpor, posebno u dijelu visoko rukovodnog kadra, jer sve nešto što je novo, a posebno ako vam nameće obavezu da u nekim određenim godinama učite neku novu kulturu, postoji otvoreni otpor, ali vjerujte mi i njihove impresije nakon obavljenih obuka i njihova svijest i saznanje koliko sami možemo doprinijeti da budemo zaštićeni i da imamo povjerenja u informacione sisteme znače.
Yeah, forgive my question stemming from that vivid discussion. And then last question, because if we are going to the next level of the discussion, we would sit here exactly the next 6 hours. It would be fine for me, but probably not for you. So the same question to you on the European level. Do you see any discussion on the supranational level about these ban or convention, or what is your impression there?
I think there is certainly a discussion going on about basically cyberspace. And anyway, just to be clear, I don't follow these discussions very closely. Let's say I'm a more down-to-earth person, basically professionally. But of course, this is super important for the future. What was important was, let's say, a very kind of opening position from the point of view of the European Union was very clearly expressed in the 2013 cybersecurity strategy of the Union. Basically, the idea that the rules of the game or the principles of international law that are valid in the offline world, as a matter of principle, they basically should apply to the online world. And this is, in a way, the opening position from the Union. Now, there are a lot of discussions which are not easy in different settings, including in the context of United Nations, and they're not easy also because there are so different understandings of what is a legitimate degree of indeed the freedom to act of governments in the question of cyberspace. So this discussion will be evolving, and I wouldn't be giving, sort of any prognostics on that. EU is part of these discussions. You have again an expression of the important principles guiding the international engagement of the Union in cyber matters. Again, we are also, let's say, as organization, also quite down to the earth. So in a sense, this kind of high-level agreement, global agreement, might be very difficult to reach, but what we can do today, indeed, is to increase trust when we can and invest. So capacity building, sharing of best practices, these are the practical measures that can actually mitigate, the profound risks that we are facing. Thank you.
Thank you so much. For me, time was flying by. I just want to wrap up. There is not an easy summary because we have different aspects. I mentioned that I try to put it in different slices. I'm thinking by myself, pillars would be the more right, or different sectors would be the right wording, better than that. But I think or assume that we all agree that we would need or will need in the future more communication between the different angles of that view, like governmental aspects on how to provide proper legalization on the academic view, not forgetting the human factor. I'm so glad having you here and hearing about that. But then public-private partnerships and coming from a private sector on how we can implement applications that are worthwhile to use with that trust. Otherwise, we will just believe, I do not like to mention that again, like the Facebook thing. So, but we need that there are valuable applications there. Everybody as citizens, we can trust in that. As Mr. Bartovic also mentioned, how could the citizens trust in the systems the government provides? So thank you very much for the participation. For me, it was a very valuable discussion. Thank you very much for listening. Oh, yeah, please. More. Thank you so much.
All right. Ladies and gentlemen, dear guests, thank you for your attention. With this panel, we close the official agenda for day one. Thank you to everyone who contributed to the discussion, and we are looking forward to continuing tomorrow. For everyone interested, we invite you to join us on the open session, Digital Talks, tonight at 8 p.m.